I'd like to welcome you to this webinar today. My name is Bill Baker. I'm with Firestorm, and this is the Crisis Coach webinar series presented by the New Jersey MEP. This is the 11th in the 2016 series, and we're going to be talking about monitoring social media intelligence. We'd also like you to become our friend. On Facebook, we're Firestorm Solutions. You can follow us on Twitter. It's Firestorm Soul. There is a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communications, crisis public relations, and consequence management. We do want to remind you, the presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion, and this information should be read in conjunction with advice from your organization's personal counsel. In addition, please do not interpret this information as legal advice or legal opinion. As I mentioned, we're going to be discussing the evolution of monitoring of social media information. Our presenter today is Karen Masullo. She is an expert on this. We'd also like to, there was a nice picture of Karen there for a moment. Our moderators today are Joe Caratanudo, who is with the New Jersey MEP, and Blair, our very own Blair Neville of Firestorm. Blair, I'll let you introduce Joe if you would, and then Joe can make some comments.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. And I just want to thank the support of the New Jersey MEP. We really appreciate all the time and energy that they've put into this webinar series. And I really want to thank them for their commitment to, continuity, preparedness, and spreading that message to their constituents of the importance of it. And one of our biggest supporters is Joe Caratanudo, who is an account manager here in New Jersey. And Joe, I want to ask you to say a couple of words just to introduce the MEP to people that might not know who it is.
Thanks, Blair. For those who are not familiar, the Jersey Manufacturing Extension Program focuses on helping small to mid-sized manufacturers to become more productive, more efficient, more globally competitive in what they do. And we do it through a host of different services that helps really manufacturers in all the different areas that they might run into. For example, managing energy costs or taking advantage of R&D tax credits. We also do a lot with process improvement like lean manufacturing and Six Sigma. We help companies get certified to the ISO standard, which is now changing to include risk assessment, which is a good part of what we're talking about today. But we also help companies with growth services to help them increase their sales and managing transportation and logistic costs. So there's really a whole host of services that can be accessed on our website at njmep.org. But today's focus is really talking about business continuity, and that brings us to the evolution of monitoring and intelligence. Blair, back to you.
Great, Joe. Thank you very much.
Karen.
No, I did think so. I just had put the phone on mute, keep the noise down. And thank you very much for that. Karen, I'm going to hand control of it back over to you. And again, thank you for your time and energy with putting this together.
Our presenter today, as I mentioned, is Karen Masullo. She's the Chief Intelligence Officer of Firestorm. She has presented and done training in many, many hours. She also has a great knowledge of the various social media tools and sites, some that we've never heard of and really don't want to hear about. Karen, over to you, please.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it. Thank you, Blair. Thank you, Joe. And thank you to the New Jersey MEP. I'd like to say also that I grew up on the Northeast Coast in New York, but I spent every summer in New Jersey. So I have very fond place in my heart for all things that are New Jersey. Please also visit us at firestorm.com. There's a wealth of resources. We've worked very hard on our website. We have some new video properties on the website in collaboration with one of our partners, the Insurance Research Letter, some really great risk, business continuity, and other articles and resources. Under the Resources tab, there are brief links to pre-recorded webinars on our YouTube channel. So there's a wealth of information there for you. I do encourage you to stop by, as well as to njmep.org. On the right side of your screen, I think on the right side of your screen, you may have your GoToWebinar sort of console dashboard. And if you have a question during the session, we may not be able to get to it, but I do want you to go ahead and type it in and ask it, because we will reply to you at the end of the session. Certainly Blair Neville will, and if it's something to do specifically with my area of subject expertise, I'll certainly try to make sure I respond to you as quickly as possible. And so let's just jump into what we're talking about today. And thank you very much for joining us, especially since many of you may have been up until 3 or 4 in the morning watching history being made. So it's a different day today, and I think it's an interesting time. We live in interesting times. And along with that, we have some new groups of threats. We've had issues with hacking and other issues affecting technology, and it's important that I understand what threats worry you. And when we look at monitoring especially, what we generally go to are behaviors of concern, and those generally are in the area of employees coming back to a workplace and visiting the workplace with violence of some type. I worked for many years in the career transition industry, where a company such as Cisco or Motorola may be laying off 5,000 to 10,000 employees at one time across the country. And we certainly were there in advance for the risk management pieces of that deliverable, but then also on what we call the notification day, which many of you are familiar with, and that it can be a very stressful and dangerous time. And so the focus was on monitoring the situation so that we understood if it was going to be volatile. We would experience instances of physical threats, but also threats against management, sabotage to the building. Well, at the time we didn't have a social channel to listen to that information or that chatter through, and today we do. And so we're going to talk about some of those approaches. And we asked you over the past year, when you register for a webinar, we've asked several questions, and we've had several large events as well. And some of those have had in excess of 1,000 companies attend. And in a survey of 948 business professionals, we asked, are you concerned related to violence in the workplace, just that one thing? And 38% of respondents said they were very concerned. And 472, or 49%, almost 50%, said they were somewhat concerned. And I know the chances are that there's somebody on this call today who has experienced an episode of some type of workplace violence or that had the potential. So as you're sitting listening to this today, I want you to think of other risks that you're also concerned with. We're going to talk about workplace violence, but let's think of other risks that may affect us that we can monitor for in advance. Because almost every disaster or incidence of violence or an act of terrorism is preceded by some type of a warning signal. And what we hear pretty consistently after an episode is that either I always thought he was kind of odd, or gee, she was such a nice person. We get a lot of the same messages, though. Those are conflicting, but we hear those things. I knew something wasn't right. You should have seen the things that this person posted on social media. And that's the one I want to talk about. The media consistently will, within 3 or 4 hours of the name of someone who is identified as the perpetrator of a crime, especially in a violence in the workplace, they will immediately start researching. They're getting their news anymore from Reddit or 4chan, where the rumors start. Then they're looking and finding the Facebook or the Instagram account of this person and starting to share out information where the person had threatened, 2 months prior to do something very violent. All of that is great in hindsight. It doesn't do the victims any good. What we're trying to do is identify those kinds of messages and that type of messaging beforehand so that we actually can do something good. We're going to look at our hypothetical person named Fred. And what if we could stop Fred from just one act of violence, death, or suicide? Recently there was, I think it was this past September, posting of a young man who said, gee, sometimes don't you wish, and I'm paraphrasing, sometimes don't you wish you could just kill your roommates? And then he posted how incredibly easy it was to buy a gun. And he posted a picture of himself in his car with the gun in his console. 2 days later, the headline named him in the killing of his roommates. It wasn't a vague threat. This wasn't some guy making a really bad joke. This was someone who wanted to kill his roommates, who went out, he bought a knife and a gun, and 2 days later actually committed the act of violence. So when we look at this from an employment point of view, and we think something may be going on, what are some of the indicators that might help us to start thinking we need to document and consolidate all of this information in one place so that if we need to take action, we're able to, especially those in a human resource role? Are there other things going on in the plant or in the facility or on the manufacturing floor that we're not being informed about? And is there a way to bring all of that into a central location? Are we giving our employees the ability to anonymously notify us of instances that are going on? Somebody is getting in more arguments with people at work. They're receiving poor performance reviews and are not happy about it. They did not get an increase in salary or hourly wage in the way they had hoped to. A coworker reported the person, and our Fred was heard to say, "You guys will be sorry." Suddenly, the subject's absenteeism rate increases. Friends hear him talking crazy, but they don't really want to get involved. And last and most importantly, we start seeing posts on social media that consistently denote frustration with work, with specific people, and with a feeling of helplessness and inability to do anything other than respond violently. And once we see these things, who's in charge? Who gets this information? One of the benefits of having a third party, such as Firestorm or whomever you choose as your monitoring team of choice, one of the benefits is that we can alert you to an issue in a way that has a logical workflow, because we sat down with you in the beginning of our relationship and we said, okay, we're going to give you about 50 different scenarios, and for each scenario we're going to talk about the workflow. So if there's an episode of sabotage to a facility, if there's a fire, if somebody threatens violence, we're going to walk through what that workflow is so that when the time comes that an actual event occurs, we're not wondering what we're supposed to do. We've already planned it out in advance. How do we know you've seen the threat? Again, when you have a third party working with you, it's part of our protocol to make sure you're alerted immediately. And we set that up through our workflow. You know, one of the worst things that happens, especially in technology, we hear about it all the time, and I'm sure many of you on the call can agree with this. Something happens in your facility. Maybe a machine breaks down or a computer program goes a little haywire, and somebody thinks somebody else knows, and so they don't report it. Or they figure, oh, Joe's going to take care of that. Joe takes care of everything. I know he knows this is happening. And they casually mention it to you like at the end of the day, and you're like, oh my God, why didn't you tell me this 7 hours ago, right? Well, it's the same thing with this. Who sees these threats and when do they know it? If you have disparate systems for notifying people, you never know with consistency who's been notified, what action's being taken, and is it consistent with the protocol that we set up originally. Also, if you have disparate systems, if there is a problem with absenteeism and a problem with more and more arguments on the work floor and a problem with social media postings, but all of those are being kept in different files and different notes and different computer programs, and we never see those all come together, we don't get the full picture. You get a picture out of context. So the key information that we need to know in order to make good decisions is missing. So a benefit of having a third party help you with this is that we're going to keep all the information together, we're going to alert you in a way you need to, but also protect you in that information that we see that is irrelevant to the situation, information that can be used litigiously, that has nothing to do with a situation of violence or risk, is not going to be communicated to you so that we don't have to be concerned about decisions being made that may be biased or colored by other things that we've seen. The point of having help in this regard is so that we can connect the dots and keep violence from occurring in your facility, at your company, in protecting your people and your property. And we're going to do that and take that in 4 simple preventative steps. The first thing is you're going to assess the risk. We know that. You're all professionals, and you know before you do anything, you're going to assess the risk. You're going to build a porch on the back of your house. You're going to look at the structure of the house. Will the joist collapse under the weight of this new piece of construction? You can tell I don't have a clue what I'm talking about. But we want to be able to assess the risk, and that's what the NJMEP is there for, to help you with resources, and Blair Neville. Blair Neville with Firestorm in New Jersey is available to you to help you walk through a self-guided, no-fee assessment. It takes about an hour. And if you'd like to do that, if you'd like to set aside an hour now that we're toward the end of the year, start 2017 fresh, let's just do a high-level analysis of your risks and help you make the plan for next year. We address the dangers in this specific context of behavioral risk and workplace violence, and we do that by looking at a vulnerability and threat assessment process. I show you examples of just things that we're seeing on a monthly basis. We saw recently at Freight Car America in Roanoke, there was a significant shooting. We saw in, I believe it was Ohio, another disgruntled former employee We see these happen when we are separating employees, when employees are unhappy with performance reviews, or they're exhibiting behaviors of concern and so are cautioned, and that further enrages them. And then, of course, we have a whole new area of radicalized citizens and terrorism in our workplaces. So we need to look at trend monitoring. We need to really understand what are issues, trends, and, of course, strategies for establishing a process for monitoring so that we understand what is going on. Are there copycats? What trends might they be following that we need to understand? We regularly review incidents that occur and help you walk through adjusting your strategies and plans accordingly. And this is from a recent infographic that we published. Again, you can find that under resources on our website. We surveyed in one survey that we did of more than 250 participants that 37% had a program to identify behaviors of concern. And we're pleased with that. That was up from the previous year. I believe the previous year had been around 32%. So we were pleased to see that increase, that companies and manufacturers are paying more attention to programs to identify behaviors of concern. But 40% still did not have any program available at all. And then the remaining 23% had sort of a mix. Some said they had a written plan. They weren't really sure where that plan was. It was one of those binders on a shelf kind of things. Another company said, well, other companies said we've got plans and we train once a year, but we don't know if it's effective or not. Now, we did have more companies than ever last year and this year participate in our virtual stress tests. And, for a company like Firestorm to come in and sit down with you and do a tabletop training is a wonderful way to spend a couple or 3 days. It is not an inexpensive proposition. It is very effective, and it will really help you identify where there are gaps. However, we also, throughout the year, we do about 6 of these virtual stress tests, which are take 2 hours, and they help supplement those sort of major annual tabletop exercises that you do. So please keep abreast of our calendar. We're going to be doing 6 of these coming up next year. 2 of them will be around the areas of behaviors of concern and violence. And they're going to really help you in a short period of time in an interactive way with our team understand in a virtual environment how we can replicate a crisis and how your team may respond. And your team is really important. We need to understand who's really in your building, right? So we can't just give lip service to pre-screening of employees. And again, having that third party, if you have a recruiter or someone who is not making the hiring decision, looking at social media and understanding, are you about to hire somebody who has a history of violence against manufacturing facilities and is only coming into your organization in order to create problems or havoc. I mean, there are all kinds of things that you have to think about. We have one a company that's undergoing some really significant growth pains on the Northeast coast. They've gone from, maybe 50 employees to more than 3,000 in a very short period of time. And that hyper growth has created significant issues. They have a workforce shortage, so they are just recruiting anybody they can to fill positions, especially manufacturing floor positions. And that is creating some issues because there are some rival factions that now work side by side in their manufacturing floor, and that is creating violence not only within the workplace, but in parking facilities and around the facility itself. So we really would want to be there to help you with those kinds of strategies. And pre-employment screening is about that. And it's not just about violence. You know, we need to understand, you know, that we're talking about brand and reputation loss and loss. We're talking about internal theft of intellectual capital, or when it comes right down to it, the money. So this is from Hiscox, the embezzlement watch list from the insurance experts. 40% of thefts were committed by an employee in the finance and accounting function. 4 of every 5 victim organizations had fewer than 100 employees. So these are small to medium businesses that can't afford to have this kind of a loss, and it can close a business down. And then the last thing we do is we aggregate open source or social media data, and that's the important thing. We don't do anything in a covert way. Everything that we look at is publicly posted, but we have analysts who are trained to understand what it is we're looking for, how to go out and gather all of that with a big net and bring it in and then analyze it in the context of the company for whom we're contracted. We know that the earlier a problem is detected, certainly the less impact it's going to have. And we also know there are threats and risks that we can identify before they become a full-blown crisis. But you've got to really listen to that big conversation flow that goes on out there in the world, and then be able to really narrow it down and look for what the specific risk profile of your company has developed for us. You know, one company we worked with recently, I sent a picture to one of the folks in the workflow who I notify, and she wrote me back and she said, I don't understand what risk you're showing me. And I explained to her that the person who had posted that they were listening to a song on Spotify on their computer while they were working had posted a picture of their computer screen with, you got it, Post-it notes with passwords, but also I could see they were an accounts payable person or accounts receivable person, and I could see all of the information right there on the computer screen. I could see account numbers. I could see, it was just way too much confidential information. And it was something that even the person to whom I alerted, they didn't even realize what they were looking at. But a thief knows what they're looking at. I want to talk a little bit about something called geospoofing, just because as we move into our next area, it's going to be an important point.
Karen?
Yes.
Hey, it's Blair. Before you jump in, I just want to make one little comment, is that for some of the smaller companies that may be on the phone or might listen to this, a lot of those companies, Karen, have HR providers, service providers. So I know a lot of the businesses that we work with here in New Jersey, the smaller manufacturers, they don't have HR departments. They might have one person who manages it. I just want to make a comment that all of these discussion points you can have with that service provider. So if they're providing, if they're providing you HR policies, if they're providing background checks for you, if they're providing, strategies for hiring or dealing with employees or clients or customers that might pose as a threat, and you're going to your service provider. Myself, Karen, we can talk to those service providers. We can share some of this information with them, because they may not know it. They may not have the skill set to be able to deal with some of these things as well. So I just wanted to mention that because I know many companies use those services, and that doesn't preclude us from engaging with them and working with you as a client to work with them as well.
That's a great point, Blair. And we work with human resource associations. We work with vendors who are members of human resource associations so that we're all trying to get the same thing done. You know, we don't, so that's a great point. Thank you. Now, when we do monitor, one of the things we can do is we can drop a pin on your location, and we can watch, again, not secretively, because these are publicly posted comments or publicly posted posts. Here I've isolated it to just Instagram and Twitter on your visual. But we can see everything that's going on. As a matter of fact, if those of you were on a webinar I did earlier this year, we actually saw someone publicly posting over a period of days how he was getting angrier and angrier with the management at the warehouse where he was employed, and he eventually said he was going to resolve it with violence. And we could watch him walk through the building tweeting. So it's interesting because we can see that if geolocation services are turned on. So we do a combination of monitoring. We monitor for keywords and key phrases and geolocation. And while we can't guarantee that we're going to catch everything, we just can't. It would be impossible. It really improves if we do both geolocation and keyword or key phrase monitoring. However, it's important to understand something called geo-spoofing. Recently, on the website Reddit, someone posted in a specific group, a guy named Hunter Park, pictured here, my roommates and I spoofed our GPS and are trolling your yik-yak. It's fantastic. And what they were doing is they had targeted a college campus 100 miles away from their location and created a panic using a fake GPS location spoofing service. There are hundreds of these on the Android and App Store. And they had posted, I'm going to stand my ground tomorrow and shoot every black person I see. Now, if you had something like that happen in your facility, in your organization, it's the same as we read about swatting. People live stream themselves having someone else swatted. They think it's funny. Ecological terrorist groups, other sorts of groups that may target your facility or your environment or your manufacturing environment can use these sorts of approaches. And so I wanted to make you aware that people are doing that. So you may get a threat that looks like it's coming from inside your facility when actually it's not. It's coming from the United Kingdom or the Soviet Union. However, if you can spoof yourself to appear like you are at a location, you can certainly spoof yourself to appear elsewhere. So if I actually am making a bomb threat and I am doing it from within your facility, I can also spoof myself to show that I'm in Oregon as opposed to New Jersey. So we take that into consideration and have tools that help us understand that type of approach. I want you to think of this. This relates to a school, but it could relate to a business. And it says, this was somebody commenting on a news story, and he said, when are we going to stop taking these threats seriously? Do we really think that bad guys are going to tell the authorities their plan before it happens? Well, yes, we do, as a matter of fact. And as a matter of fact, many of those who went on to commit horrific acts of violence and murder not only posted on social media prior to or posted on some of the darker social sites, but created manifestos, multi-page or multi-video manifestos talking specifically about what they were going to do. What we need is to be able to see that and act upon it. We know there are some holes in the system. We know that, for instance, the shooter at the Pulse nightclub or the shooter in California, we know people did try to intervene, and we do have to make that part of the process better so that we can anonymously report our concerns and know that action will be taken. But the earlier you know that there is a threat to your organization, to your people, or your property, the better you can seek counsel and make critical decisions at a time when those need to be made. And Blair or other people at Firestorm are available to you to help with that critical decision support in light of the threat. So how do we find the threats? My team works in a very simple process. We act through awareness, we contextualize what we're seeing, and then using the tools that we have, we are trained to be able to help you understand the flow of information and how to act from there. So let's look at a few things that go on. Not only do we have the threat of violence coming into our facilities, we have the threat of violence on our property. You know, recently a Pizza Hut employee shot and killed an attempted robber. Well, that creates a whole new situation for Pizza Hut. That wasn't someone who was authorized to carry within the facility. And the parent of the robber who was shot is blaming Pizza Hut for having, she wants to know why her child was shot. People in the restaurant want to know why that Pizza Hut employee was armed. So that opens up a whole nother avenue. We see these sorts of threats all day long through our monitoring tool. I'm going to kill someone at work today. I swear nothing better happens tonight. I'm going to kill someone at work if something happens. That related to a TV show, by the way. I hate produce. It killed my body and soul. I switched over to cashier, and it's okay. I'm still going to be in retail forever. One day I'm going to take a gun to work and shoot myself in front of the first expletive customer I encounter so they have my blood on their hands forever. That's a pretty significant threat. That comes from 4chan that we picked up. I take my gun to work, sad case, but it's me or him. You know the rest. You know, I followed that pretty deeply, and there's a beef going on with two employees who work together, have for a long time, and we were able to figure out what city, what state, first what state, what city, and then through some images that were posted, we were able to figure out they were two high school kids who worked in a fast food location together, and we were able to notify the company. And they are on our account. We just we can't see something and not do something about it. But this is just a teeny tiny sampling of things that our team sees every day. So once we see this information, we have to put it in context. I found I'm taking my gun to school yesterday. They tried to jump me. I'm taking my gun to school. Yesterday they tried to jump me. This could say work as well, but the thing that's important about this is these are song lyrics. So everything we see, we also run a cross-check on to make sure it's not a quote from a movie, a quote from a book or an e-book, or song lyrics, because some song lyrics are really violent. There was a band a couple of years ago called Immure that had a song called Gonna Take a Gun to School, and it started trending. It trended for like a year, and it was important that we educated our clients about the fact that these were song lyrics, and had to figure out how do we separate the real threats out from these song lyrics. So we take that in consideration as well. And the point I want to make about this is we do all of this because it's our job, it's our passion, and it's how we assist you keep your business running smoothly, because you don't have the time to do all these things and to worry about all of these parts and pieces on monitoring. We're very proud that we've kept guns and violence out of many employers over the past 4.5 years since we started our monitoring practice. And when it comes to tools and trainings, we've researched the simplest tools that we can use in order to achieve our aims in the most cost-effective way for you, but also that have a simple view and a dashboard so that you can readily understand the information that we're giving you, so that you can understand what social platforms are popular in your region, how people are talking about drugs or other risk behaviors. I can't tell you how many employees are sneaking out to the roofs of buildings, having a drink or smoking an illegal substance on your roof. So they're posting pictures of it on social media, and that helps us all. Then there are other risks that we need to think about, right? So on the left-hand side of your screen, here's somebody who was really angry with a company. He didn't get the kind of resolution. So what they did was they posted the CEO's home phone number and their office on social media. Well, that's something we need to monitor for then. Those are things you need to think about. We need to monitor your CEO's name, your president's name. We may need to monitor their address or their phone number in order to let you know that we're protecting those people in your organization as best as possible. Now, on the other side of the CEO question, we may have a CEO who creates their own controversy. On the right-hand side, T-Mobile's CEO at one point in time, in January of this year, got a bad review, not a review, but an analysis by EFF and didn't know who EFF was. And that's a problem in his industry because EFF is the Electronic Frontier Foundation that works to keep the internet free and open, and they're a very vocal group. So the fact that he didn't know who they were was very embarrassing and actually hurt their brand. So you need to be aware of what's being said about you, both internally and externally. We do all of this because we're trying to determine the difference between what a real threat is and what a behavior of concern is. You know, we know what a threat is. Somebody comes up to you at work and pushes you and says, you know, I'm going to kick your butt at the end of the shift. It's pretty clear. I mean, that's a threatening behavior and it's actionable. You know, we know what happened. Or maybe you get conditional threats. You know, if I don't get the shifts I want, I'm going to come back here and set fire to all the dumpsters. Those are clear. But behaviors of concern are not so clear. And behaviors of concern can be very private, other than the fact that the internet and social websites have started letting us into the minds of what used to be very private journals, writings, obsessions, through websites like Tumblr or other vanity blog websites where we see these manifestos that blame other people for problems, that discuss a fascination with weapons or past shooters or people who committed acts of violence, or making those veiled or indirect or even direct threats through a social website. We start to see clarity through the social behavior on social or open source media, where there are angry or threatening statements being made, name-calling, abusiveness. So we actually can use our social tools today as a tool in order to identify threats before they happen. And that's where that evolution has come from. Originally, when these tools were created, they were created for marketing. They were created for marketers to be able to reach out and engage with the community to encourage the purchase of products and services. And today we're realizing that we have a great deal more access to really important intelligence, not in a covert way. This is publicly shared information that we can aggregate and give to you in a way that makes absolute sense. We've helped employers recognize that people were dealing drugs out of their facilities, that people were stealing drugs out of their facilities. We've helped in a number of ways through publicly posted information. So I need you to think about this today for yourselves. Do you currently use any external intelligence to identify potential threats in your organization? The last time we polled a group of folks on a webinar, it was about a third, and a third. Yes, 30% no, 37%. And then that don't know is the part that we really want to talk to. If you don't know how it's being done in your organization, let's find out. And you can reach out to us again. And we'll help you by starting with that no-fee assessment. The Firestorm Crisis Management Performance Maturity Rating Model shows that we have 4 stages that you can be in. We want to work with you to take you from stage 1, where everything is a prize and a liability, through where everything is reactive, to where you pre-act and really predict, plan, and perform, to a culture of strategic preparedness, where you have a clear playbook for a major crisis, including those threats that may have come in through social media. I'd like to close this up with Blair. Blair, do you have any comments that you'd like to add to the end of our session today?
No, not really. I think that earlier, I just wanted to kind of bring it back to bring it back to the smaller accounts, which we do have, and let them know that some of this sounds like a daunting task, and it isn't trivial by any means. But there are pieces that can fit every size of account, and there's things we can do for you. And at least opening a dialogue and trying to understand how this can help you with your providers, help you with your clients, is a great discussion. And one thing I would say is we have some great talent with Karen, who's very intimate with these tools, understands the complexities of it, and is a great resource for me and you. So my advice would be, let's take advantage of it and have those discussions and see how we can help or where some of this might apply in your business, and regardless of size.
Absolutely, Blair. Thank you. And, Firestorm works with companies that are a company of 1 to a company of 10,000. So I think, one of the things we understand about risk is that it affects everyone. It doesn't know the size of your business, and it doesn't really care. You can reach Blair at bneville@firestorm.com. If you have any questions, please let us know. You can reach out to us at webinars@firestorm.com. Visit us on our website, please do. And I just want to thank you today for your attention and your attendance, and take advantage of that no-fee assessment, and have a great day. This will conclude today's webinar, and thanks again.
Thanks, Karen. That was great.
Thanks, Karen.